Hello, friends, and shalom. This is Tom with Truth Ignited Ministry, where I talk about things that they don't teach in your churches. And before we get going today, just a few reminders, as always. If you're interested in more teachings just like this from Truth Ignited, you can visit our website at truthignited.com. We've got a lot of great articles on there and other resources available to help you dig deeper into topics just like this one, because today's message is going to really just kind of scratch the surface a little bit. If you want to make a financial donation to Truth Ignited Ministry, the best way to do that is through the Cash App at $Truth Ignited, but you can also go to the website and find other options to give that way as well. And another way you can support Truth Ignited is through our TeePublic store, where you can find t-shirts and other cool merchandise that you can use to show off your faith. And be sure to subscribe and turn on all the notifications, especially on Facebook and YouTube, as well as X, Instagram, wherever you see Truth Ignited with a social media presence. But definitely you want to connect through Facebook and YouTube, because that's where the bulk of our ministry work is being done right now. And just, again, remember to turn on notifications for that. That's very important, because you don't want to miss anything. So today I want to get into a little bit of a message that I have titled, "The Problem with Claiming That Christmas is Not Pagan." You see, every year, this debate, if we should even call it that, it gets heated. And every year there are people who double down on their position that Christmas is not pagan. And I've seen some crazy stuff with this. You know, one guy one year sent me a whole thing where he literally made up his own definition of the word pagan and used that to deem Christmas not pagan, because his made-up definition, according to his made-up definition, it wasn't pagan, because he wrote his definition in such a way that he could use it to deem Christmas not pagan. I mean, just total blatant dishonesty. And this year I've seen some more wild claims about the whole thing. One being a claim that Christmas trees are an exclusively Protestant tradition, that they were not even created by the Catholic Church. I mean, let's say that that's true. So what? Does it really mean anything? Like, the holiday itself is a Roman Catholic creation. The word Christmas is formed from the phrase Christ's Mass, a term first used in the year 1080. And any December 25th celebration of the birth of Yeshua prior to that was also exclusively Catholic. So, you know, there's claims that they called it the Feast of the Nativity or something like that. It was all Roman Catholic. So the origin of the Christmas tree really is irrelevant, especially when many of the early Protestants refused to celebrate Christmas because it is a Catholic holiday. And I'm going to look at some of those here in a little bit. But look, if you study the various religions that worshipped a particular goddess, you'll find where this whole idea comes from. In these traditions, it is the belief that the goddess or some other feminine spirit, some talk about nymphs and other things, live in the top of the tree. Okay? So the sacred trees where the goddess resides are decorated, and gifts for the goddess are placed around the base of the tree. And what do we see with the Christmas trees? We see an angel or a star placed at the top of the tree, where the goddess resides. The tree is decorated, and gifts are placed around the base of the tree. And you know what Christians will do? I see this all the time. One thing they'll do, they'll say something like this: well, in the case of those religions involving tree goddesses, none of them used spruce or fig trees. I mean, seriously? That's your counter argument? That they didn't use the same kind of tree that people use for Christmas trees in their goddess worship? And look, I mean, I get it, right? Like in Hinduism, there's the peepal trees, right? And they're fig tree. They're a type of fig tree. But that's the practice. They believe the goddess lives in the top of the tree. They decorate this peepal tree. They put gifts for the goddess around the base of the tree. In Old Norse religion, where they were worshiping Bridget and other goddesses of the Norse religion, right? It was an oak tree that was used for this practice, right? And in other religions, in other groups, they use different types of trees because they lived in areas where they just took the tree that was prominent in their region of the world. Okay, so listen, okay, just because Christians have taken the Christmas tree, the fir tree, the triangular shaped evergreen fir trees, spruces or whatever, and they've incorporated these same elements. They put an angel or a star at the top where the goddess lives. They decorate the tree, just like people decorated their trees for their goddesses, and they put gifts in. And the Christians will probably say something like, well, we're not giving gifts to the goddess. We're giving gifts to each other. Who cares? You're doing the same thing. Deuteronomy chapter 12, it says, do not learn the ways of the heathens. Do not take their religious practices and try to turn them into practices used to worship our God. So no matter how you look at this, it doesn't matter. You've appropriated something that is historically the practice of pagan goddess worship. And there are so many examples all over the world and all throughout history of this practice of a goddess living at the top of the tree, just where you put your star or your angel on your Christmas tree, and decorating the tree and then giving gifts placed around the base of the tree. It's all through history. It's all through these pagan cultures. There are so many examples of it, and it's the same thing. And you know where you will not find it? You will not find this practice described in your Bible. The closest thing is Jeremiah chapter 10, verses 1 through 5. Now, I know a lot of people like to argue about that passage because Christmas trees didn't exist in Jeremiah's day, and I get that, right? Christmas trees didn't exist until the 1800s in England. Some people tried to take it back to a earlier Germanic practice in the 1600s. Either way, it's long after the day of Jeremiah. Jeremiah was describing an Asherah tree, which was one of these same trees. They were living trees and sometimes cut down trees, and there are archaeological records that verify that this is the same practice. They believed the goddess Asherah lived in the top of the tree. They would decorate the tree, and they would place gifts for Asherah around the base of the tree. It's the same practice that we see all through history. Okay? And I saw one guy thought he knew what he's talking about, right? He said, oh, if you go to verse 5, it's talking about a palm tree in Jeremiah 10. No, it said it's like a palm tree. You look at some translations, it says it's like a scarecrow. So it wasn't saying it was a palm tree. It was saying that the trees that were propped up for Asherah worship were like the palm trees, like the scarecrows that were propped up. Okay, so it was being descriptive. It wasn't necessarily, no, it could have been a palm tree for all I know, right? People might have used palm trees for Asherah worship, but it was a tree that was designated for Asherah worship, where the goddess lived at the top of the tree. They decorated the tree in silver and gold to honor the goddess that lived in the tree, and then they placed gifts for the goddess around the base of the tree. That's the practice we see all through history with all of these different examples all over the world. I saw one popular Christian teacher, a fellow named Mike Winger. He made a video about a Christmas tree where he picked out a claim that was easily refuted. This is what they call a straw man argument. Okay, it's where you bring up a claim that is easily refuted. That's your straw man that you can easily tear down, and that somehow supports your point. And that's what he did. He refuted this easily refuted claim and drew the conclusion, see, obviously, if this claim is wrong, then there's obviously nothing wrong with Christmas trees. Why don't we look at like the whole of it all, instead of just taking one point that you can easily tear down and say, see, that proves that there's nothing wrong. No, you gotta look at a whole lot more, dude. And that's how it often goes with those who want to insist that Christmas is not pagan or whatever. You know, if you don't want to call it pagan, we can call it idolatry, we can call it worldly, we can just call it Roman Catholic. Any of those labels is enough to justify saying it's not something a true follower of Yeshua should have anything to do with. But here's how a lot of people seem to justify saying Christmas is not pagan or whatever. Okay? See, there's a book called The Two Babylons by a guy named Alexander Hislop. It was written and published in 1858, so it's pretty old. Okay? And it turns out that many, if not all, of the claims in that book have turned out to be wrong. So a lot of people are taking this book and making the claim that literally all claims that Christmas is rooted to paganism come from this book. So if the book is wrong, then Christmas is not pagan. Again, we got a straw man, right? Well, Hislop's book is wrong. All pagan claims tie to Hislop's book. So we tear down Hislop's book and Christmas is no longer pagan. That's how these people are acting. Some people claim that it wasn't until the 12th century when a Catholic bishop named Jacob Bar Saliba made a definitive statement that Christians, or really Catholics, chose to date the date of December 25th to coincide with pagan festivals like Saturnalia, commemorating the birth of the sun. Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, all of that stuff from ancient Rome. So first of all, that's a long time before Hislop comes on the scene. So, right or wrong in any of his claims, the idea that Christmas is pagan did not originate with Alexander Hislop in his book. Okay? And Christian opposition to Christmas, or even the stated influence of it, like Saturnalia, the Roman Saturnalia, have occurred all throughout history. Check this out. Let me get into some stuff here. Clement of Alexandria, around the turn of the 3rd century, appears to have opposed any celebration of Yeshua's birth. And he also mentioned several dates that people had speculated by his time to be the date of Yeshua's birth, and none of them were December 25th. Tertullian, around the same time, in his Against Idolatry, expresses opposition to Christians celebrating festivals like the Roman Saturnalia, the New Year, Matronalia, and any other midwinter festival, describing a number of celebratory traditions for these festivals that parallel modern Christmas traditions. Origen, also in the early 3rd century, condemned the celebration of birthdays, including Messiah's birthday, as a practice of sinners. So this was all going on before there's ever any record of what people say is the first Christmas. 336 AD is when they say, and you know, I've talked about that in some other, I'm not going to get into that right now, but that's what, now that's a sketchy date. And I've got whole articles on the website on truthignited.com where you can find some great articles that I get deeper into that issue. But listen, it really makes me wonder why so many people want to defer to the alleged first Christmas of 336 instead of deferring to these beliefs of these early prominent Christian writers who lived much closer to the time of the apostles, who said we shouldn't be celebrating the Messiah's birth at all, right? Like, these are the they call them the ante-Nicene church fathers or whatever. These are the pre-Catholic Christian writers who are saying, no, we shouldn't have anything to do with any of this. We shouldn't be celebrating any birthday. Now, I don't want to get into that too deep, right? But why aren't we, like, if we're going to defer to somebody, we should be deferring to these guys instead of the Roman Catholics who created Christmas. In the 7th to 9th centuries, a group known as the Paulicians rejected many Catholic and Orthodox traditions, including the celebration of Christmas. They emphasized a return to the simplicity of the New Testament and rejected the liturgical calendar, considering it a human invention. In the 10th to 12th centuries, a sect called the Bogomils rejected the celebration of Christmas and other Christian festivals, which they associated with the corrupt material world and the institutional church. They sought a purer spiritual form of Christianity and condemned feasting and decorations as worldly distractions. These are just examples of the various groups throughout history that opposed Christmas. Okay, this is not a new thing. This is not a Hislop thing. This is not a Hebrew roots movement thing. You know, people like to try to say, and then that's a whole cultish thing, Hebrew roots, because they got all kind of, I've gotten into that before, but listen, in addition to all of this, many of the Protestant traditions many from the Protestant tradition long before Hislop spoke in opposition to Christmas. Listen, Puritans in England and Scotland and the American colonies vehemently opposed celebrating Christmas. In 1560, under the influence of John Knox, now that's a big name in Protestant history, okay? John Knox, the celebration of Christmas was abolished in Scotland in an effort to purge Catholicism. And it stayed that way until like the 19th century. Knox was a staunch opponent of the celebration of Christmas and other Catholic festivals. In 1633, a Puritan named William Prine stated that Christmas was derived from the Roman Saturnalia and Bacchanalian festivals and should be condemned. Okay? Now I know a lot of people are trying to dispute that history, but I'm just pointing out, this has been consistent through the whole timeline of Christian history. Non-Catholic any groups that rose up in opposition to Roman Catholicism all through the whole timeline of the 2,000 years of Christian history. Okay? In 1659, the Puritan Massachusetts Bay Colony banned Christmas completely with fines for celebrating it, calling it a superstitious festival grounded upon no warrant of Scripture. In other words, it's not in the Bible. Why would we celebrate a Roman Catholic holiday that's not in the Bible? John Cotton, a Puritan minister in New England around the same time, argued that celebrating Christmas was rooted in superstition and idolatry, emphasizing that there is no biblical command to observe Christ's birth. In parts of England and the American colonies, heavily controlled by Puritans, the celebration of Christmas was banned. You know, a lot of people would argue that these were minority groups. They do not represent the whole of Christianity throughout history. Okay? But I will remind you that Yeshua said that the many would be those who walk the broad path to destruction, and few would be those who find the truth. Sure, some of these Christian groups, some of these groups that opposed Christmas, they might have been off in some other ways. But the point is, there have always been those all throughout history of Christianity who stopped and said, wait a sec, this stuff is not in the Bible. And there is at least the appearance it's connected with paganism. We shouldn't be doing this. Maybe they didn't figure out that we should keep the biblically appointed feast times, but they at least recognize Christmas has good reason to be questioned. And it's funny how the defenders of Christmas today always want to ignore this and focus on what they feel supports their defense of Christmas. So here's the thing. There are those who say Christmas is not pagan, and those who say it is. Those who want to insist that it's not have put themselves in quite a pickle, because they have to prove every single last claim used to support the idea that it's pagan or idolatry or Catholicism or any of it, right? They would have to prove all of those points to be wrong. You can't just say Hislop was wrong and that's the end of it. You've got so many other things. You've got a wealth of encyclopedias and books in academia, and you've got historical records, and you've got archaeological finds, and you've got all of these different things, and you've got the record all through history of various claims about Christmas. And listen, like even early Christian writers like John Chrysostom made a reference in the 4th century, made a reference to Christmas, alluding to it coming from sun god worship, from the Roman sun god worship, right? So these guys were already, even in the 3rd and 4th century, these people were saying, they were admitting that they took it from the Roman worship of the sun gods. And again, I've got plenty of material that will help you dig into this. So listen, it's not enough to say Hislop was wrong. They have to prove Tertullian and Clement were wrong. They have to prove the early Protestants were wrong. They have to go through, again, all encyclopedias, scholarly resources, every single source that makes a claim that Christmas is pagan, and prove all of them wrong. If they cannot do that, they have no ground to say it's not pagan and are therefore bearing false witness. I've heard some of them dogmatically say Hislop lied. Well, can you prove that Hislop lied? I don't dispute that Hislop was wrong, but accusing him of lying is a bigger charge. He clearly did a lot of research and cited a lot of sources for his book. So maybe he was just a bit misguided or didn't know how to properly do research or something else. In other words, he could have been very sincere in his presentation and was simply sincerely wrong. But that does not make him a liar. It makes him a person who studied a topic and came to wrong conclusions, and now we're finding out that he got some things wrong. That's a big difference. And anyone who accuses him of being a liar, anyone who says Hislop lied, just like that, without hard evidence that he was lying, is themselves a liar, bearing false witness, making false accusations. That's a violation of the Torah. Heck, that's breaking one of the so-called 10 Commandments. You know what they call the 10 Commandments. But look, on the flip side, those of us who are concerned about the celebration of Christmas only need one of the strikes against it to be true. And as long as there are strikes against it that have not been sufficiently refuted, it remains that any serious follower of Yeshua should refrain from it. It's not in the Bible, and it's definitely Roman Catholic. And look, the veneration of saints, the Pope as the Vicar of Christ, worship of Mary, Roman Catholicism is completely an idolatrous and pagan religion. And anyone who denies that really needs to get their brain checked. Because, I mean, just the veneration of saints, right? They name their cathedrals after saints. They put statues up of their saints. Their saints are patron saints of this, that, or the other, right? All of the characteristics that you see in pagan pantheons of gods is paralleled in the veneration of saints in the Catholic Church. It's a pagan religion. I don't mean to sound rude, but seriously, how can anyone defend Catholicism as an acceptable biblical faith is simply incomprehensible to me. And listen, Christians use this argument all the time when they're addressing things that they call sin. Like one of the top ones I've heard is used with alcohol. The argument goes like this. If you're right and I'm wrong, all I'm doing is refraining from drinking alcohol. But we both go to heaven. But if I'm right and you're wrong, and then you stand before God as a sinner, what then? Same with unclean meats like pork, shellfish. How many times have Torah-positive, Messianic, pronomian type folks, whatever people want to call themselves in this movement these days, we've used that same argument here too. And that argument applies here as well. And that is the problem with claiming Christmas as not pagan. What happens if it is? What happens even if it's not pagan specifically, but it's still evil in the eyes of God? Idolatry, Roman Catholic, whatever, worldly, whatever. If God sees it as evil in his eyes for any reason, it's not in the Bible. It's the creation of Catholicism. It's got a whole slew of various claims, some not so good, but others really quite good, that link Christmas to various forms of paganism. What happens if any one of those claims are true and the Christmas defenders stand before God and have to answer for it? There's an easy solution. Don't celebrate it. I know it sounds hard, but it's really not, because, listen, check it out. There is a holiday in the Bible in the middle of winter. It's a day that Yeshua celebrated. John 10, verse 22 to 23 says that Yeshua went to the temple in Jerusalem when the people were celebrating Hanukkah. And you know what? Hanukkah is an 8-day celebration. And you know what? Many of the Christmas traditions that are definitely not pagan, like decorating your home, sharing gifts, eating cookies, and other such things, are often also used in Hanukkah. Now, I do see some people doing things that are questionable, if not outright pagan, like Hanukkah-themed decorated trees or Hanukkah gnomes. Don't do that. But you can celebrate the holiday that your Messiah celebrated. How's that for a novel idea? The Bible does, after all, instruct us to walk just as he walked. Literally, the whole of Christianity will say that we are to follow Yeshua or Jesus, whatever one of those you feel is, what Jesus, Yeshua, I don't really care what you say. He never celebrated Christmas because he was not a Catholic priest or a Christian pastor. He was a Jewish rabbi. And Hanukkah is not a Jewish holiday. It's a Bible holiday. It's in the Bible. It's in the gospel. Yeshua went to the temple for Hanukkah. It's a Bible holiday, one that Yeshua, the one we are to follow, celebrated. So you don't have to lose anything by abandoning Christmas. You actually have the opportunity to gain a bigger, longer, more joyous holiday by simply deciding to do what Yeshua did instead of following unbiblical forms of Christianity. And listen, I've got to end here. I got to wrap this up. And there's much more I could have said. And if you want to learn more, be sure to visit the website, truthignited.com. And be sure to hit up my articles and dig into these topics a little bit deeper. But listen, folks, check it out. There's much to be gained by a return to the discarded values of the past. And those values are the Torah of our God, the Torah that Yeshua followed. And I'll see you guys next time. Shalom.
Hey there, I'm so glad you tuned in today. Now, if you enjoy the teachings of Truth Ignited and you want to financially support the ministry, we want to offer you a few ways to do that. First, we've got our Cash App. Scan the QR code or use $ Truth Ignited. Now, this is a preferred method because we don't incur any fees for this service. But we understand that not everybody uses the Cash App, so you can also go to our Spotify for Podcasters page right here, and you can sign up to become a $5 or $10 monthly partner. You can also visit truthignited.com and give your financial support there and find a lot more great messages just like the one you listened to. Also, be sure to check out our TeePublic store where you can find a lot of really cool merchandise, t-shirts and other items that you can use to show off your faith. Be sure to follow Truth Ignited on Facebook, Twitter or X, YouTube, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And remember to share these messages on all of your social media pages. I'll see you next time. Blessings and shalom.